Hello, my name is Anna, and today I'm going to talk to you about the movie Spirit. Now, Spirit is an animated horse movie, and it follows the story of Spirit, a Mustang, who is captured by American soldiers and basically forced to be broken. His journey as he tries to find his way home. Now, Spirit is obviously a children's movie, but I feel there are a lot more adult themes and a lot that can be gleaned from this. The story portrays the American soldiers as the villains of the story, which I feel like is pretty rare. It also shows westward expansion, as the United States forcefully removed indigenous people from their land. So I'd like to go ahead and put in a disclaimer here. Everything that I'm going to be talking about is completely my own opinion and my own interpretation of the film. I will be talking about the manner and the tone in which the American soldiers treat the Native American people. Obviously, I am a white person, and I'm probably not the ideal human to be talking about this, but I just wanted to give you my opinions and my viewpoint as I see it. Obviously, if you are an Indigenous person and you feel that I got something wrong or that there is a different interpretation, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions, and if there's anything that I can improve upon. Furthermore, it is incredibly emotional and relatable in a strange way. It really makes you feel like you too are just a horse captured by the American government and forced to run in the rat race that is capitalistic society. Not to mention the soundtrack, which is Bryan Adams and Hans Zimmer. And let me tell you, neither one of those people needed to go that hard on the soundtrack, but they gave it their all, and it is incredible. Some forewarning, I don't want to put too much of the soundtrack into this because I don't want to get copyright claimed, so I will be singing some of it, and you're just going to have to deal with that because you need to get the whole vibe. You need to get the full idea. It's important. Now, before we get into the main story, I want to talk about some background briefly. So, Spirit was released in May of 2002. It was co-directed by Lorna Cook and Kelly Asbury. Spirit was Kelly Asbury's directorial debut. He was actually working on Shrek 1 at the time. He wasn't directing it, but he was involved in it. He decided to leave Shrek 1 and focus his attention fully on Spirit because he felt so passionate about the project. There's some other projects that Kelly Asbury has been involved in later on include Romeo and Juliet, Smurfs, The Lost Village, and the other co-director is Lorna Cook. Now, she worked as an animator, on the creative team of some other really iconic movies that include The Land Before Time, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, Mulan, and Prince of Egypt. So she's we've got some iconic directors right off the bat. And the voice of Spirit, or Spirit's inner monologue, is Matt Damon. So we just have an all-around good group here. Spirit is a mix of traditional and computer animation. And the animation is honestly very beautiful. I'm not techie in that way, and I can't fully explain to you the difference between computer and traditional animation. But traditional animation is basically paper, when you draw on paper and animate the old-fashioned way. And I think that for a 2002 movie, the graphics were really good. So let's talk about how Spirit was received. So Spirit in total made approximately 122.6 million in the box office. Opening weekend, Spirit grossed about 17 million in the box office, and then the total would be 122.6 million approximately that it made after the first few weeks or whatever. It actually opened fourth behind Star Wars Episode 11 and the Spider-Man movie. I think that that's pretty impressive for this little DreamWorks animated horse film to make it fourth behind some of these movies that people still remember. I stumbled upon this review in which this man, Peter Bradshaw, absolutely roasts Spirit. He did not like the film. He basically says in his review that Spirit is a terrible movie because they don't animate the genitalia of the horses. He feels that the autonomy of the animals is not accurately portrayed. He also thinks that it's a disappointingly tame tale of a wild horse, and that Shrek 1 was way better. I'll let you pause to read that one if you like, because it's honestly fucking hilarious. Basically, he ends the review by saying the film is close to Bambi, which I strongly disagree with. Okay, now let's get into the actual movie. So, opening scene, an eagle flies overhead. We see what looks to be canyons and flatland, probably somewhere in western Colorado or Utah. The eagle flies over the sky. We get Spirit, aka Matt Damon, his inner monologue. Now, we're going to get a lot of his inner monologue because obviously he's a horse. So the horse does not like speak, like he neighs, but like we only know what Spirit is thinking because he's the narrator. Okay? Did you get it? All right. So, opening line from Spirit. The story that I want to tell you cannot be found in a book. They say the history of the West was written from the saddle of a horse, but it's never been told from the heart of one. Not till now. Sheesh. Also, I want you to imagine the opening credits are playing. So we have Hans Zimmer's soundtrack, and it's like da 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 da. Okay, that's the vibe. So that's playing as this line goes. Okay, I was born here, in this place that would come to be called the Old West. But to me, the land was ageless. It had no beginning and no end, no boundary between earth and sky. Like the wind in the buffalo grass, we belonged here. We would always belong here. Wow, incredible, amazing, no notes. So then it cuts to a scene of horses galloping through the fields, and the inspirational music starts to crescendo. So the next scene is Spirit being born, and we don't like see anything gross, but he's fresh. He's waddling around, and him and his mom have a little moment where they like greet each other, and it's really cute. And also, Spirit's dad is just kind of like non-existent in this film. Like, who cares about Spirit's dad? Whatever. Him and his mom have like a really cute bond, and that's like reiterated throughout the show. And then the song Here I Am starts playing. So, here I am, wild and free. Da, 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 da. Okay, you get it? So, when I was doing research about the movie, I was trying to find if anything was like inaccurate. And I found a comment where someone says, Spirit claims he became leader of the Cimarron herd, like my father before me. But young stallions leave their father's herd at adolescence and do not take over for them. If they did, they'd end up mating with their mothers and sisters.
Child. Anyway, so
then there's a scene where Spirit like protects the entire herd from a wildcat, and we establish that he's a badass and he can beat up wildcats even though he's just a horse. And we get this like moment there. Also, side note, Spirit gives me very much Leo or Aries energy. Like, I'm thinking maybe more Aries than Leo, but I'll let you decide as the film progresses. We get a montage of Spirit growing up, and it's really cute and everything. So it cuts to the scene where it's nighttime, and all of the horses are like grazing in the pasture. Spirit notices a light in the distance, and he's like, that's weird. What's that light? Because keep in mind, they're in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't know what lights are, he doesn't know what people are. So he sees this light and he's like, I want to go check it out. I want to see what's going on over there. And his mom is kind of cautious. She's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And he's like, nah, it'll be fine. So he goes over there and he goes to check it out. So this is where the plot thickens. This is where things get interesting, okay? So as he's going to investigate the light, he says this. Something new came upon the land one night. Something that would change my life forever. And so my journey began.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
So he stumbles upon a camp of army soldiers, and they're all in a circle around the fire, and they're asleep. And he's like looking around. The funny thing is, as he's approaching the camp, he sees the other horses, and they all look exactly the same, and they all have like bridles and stuff on, and the US Army brand. And he's like confused. Like, what's going on? I don't really understand why these horses all look the same. So the horses see him and they're like, dude, you need to get out of here. They're like going like this. They're like, they're like, get out of here, dude. And he's like, bro, I'm fine. Part of this is him feeling like he needs to protect his herd at like all costs because that's where he finds his value, right? But another part is he's extremely curious and he's also kind of cocky. Like he doesn't feel like there's anything that he really couldn't fight or couldn't get away from because he's spirit, like he's a Mustang. So he continues on into the camp and he's like sniffing around and basically he gets caught. So he gets caught, and all the soldiers wake up and they're like, holy crap, there's this beautiful horse in our camp. We gotta capture him because that's what we do as humans, right? When we see beautiful things, we just want to pick them and keep them in little dark corners for ourselves. A chase ensues and Spirit's running away. Keep in mind, there's like 5 guys, okay? And they're all on their horses. They get up really fast and they're like, let's go. He thinks he's gotten away, but then he realizes they're still behind him and he's actually led them directly to the rest of his herd. So he like immediately backtracks and goes back in the same direction. And he leads them on this wild chase. There's this part where they're in the middle of the canyon and he's like cornered and Spirit like jumps over the other horses, it like scales the canyon wall. It's a big thing. It's pretty fucking cool. There's this long chase and again you get the feeling that Spirit is going to get away. But right at the very last second, a rope comes into the frame and goes around his neck and like yanks him backwards, and then like 5 other ropes also go around him at the same time and he's caught. He's on the ground, he's fighting, he's neighing, he's giving it his best shot. And honestly, this part's kind of triggering because it's very mob mentality. It's very one person and then like 5 other people, and it's a lot and it's sad. And as he's literally on the ground fighting for his life, he looks up and his mom is up there and she's like wants to come down and help him, and he's like, no, like get out of here, like go. And so she has to turn around and leave her son there. Oh my god, it's crazy. So then we basically get another montage of them taking Spirit back to their like army base situation. And there's a lot of like different scenery to show that like they're going a far way, and basically Spirit is just going further and further away from his home. And keep in mind, Spirit is fighting the entire way. Like he never gives up. He's giving these guys a run for their money. They finally get to the army camp and it's basically this big like fort, and Spirit is confused. He's never seen anything like this before. He calls the humans the two-legged. He doesn't understand why the other horses all look the same and why they all, have these like weird saddles on them. He gets there and they're trying to like cut his hair and brand him and like do the shoe stuff, and he is having none of it. He is fighting, he's kicking these guys in the face. The most unrealistic part of this movie is that somebody could be kicked in the head by a horse and just like walk away with a black eye. Like, hello? Sir, you have brain damage. He's putting up a fight, and then the Colonel comes. So the Colonel is another character, and we don't like this guy. This guy sucks, okay? And there's this weird tension between the Colonel and Spirit throughout the movie. Like, Colonel is very much this dude who's never been defied, who has this huge ego, and thinks everything should be done his way. And Spirit is like, F you, I'm gonna do what I want. You can't tell me what to do. And the Colonel sucks. Like, that guy sucks. He comes up and he's like, what's going on?
Pooja, what is this behavior?
And they're like, we got a fighter, sir. Like, he's putting up a fight. And then the Colonel responds with, the army has dealt with wild horses before. This one will be no different. Now, put a bookmark in that one, because I'm going to come back to that later. Again, we get Spirit's inner monologue. I remember the first time I saw a rat curled up in my path. This one didn't look like a rat, but I was still thinking, snake.
How dare you call my daughter a sneak? She's not a sneak.
So anyway, basically the Colonel says, okay, like, you want to put up a fight? I'm not dealing with this. So he says, tie Spirit up into the corral with no food and no water for 3 days. This is also very like cult mentality, because when you join a cult, they often like deprive you of food and water for days at a time and sleep. And then like try to brainwash you and stuff, but that's another video. Basically, he's like, put him in the corral for 3 days with no food and no water, and then we'll break him. So you tell me what that sounds like. Spirit is in the corral. It's honestly really sad. And at night, he looks up at the sky at the stars, and then it cuts to a scene of his mom also looking up at the sky at the stars and like the rest of his herd. Dear John who, honestly. The next day, the soldiers bring in a Native American man, and his name is Little Creek. So Little Creek is played by Daniel Studds, who is actually an Indigenous actor, so the bar is really on the floor here, but I guess kudos to DreamWorks for actually getting an Indigenous actor for this role. So they bring in Little Creek, and the colonel's like, what do we have here? And the soldiers are like, we found him by the supply wagon. And then the colonel responds, well, what do we have here? A Lakota, not as tall as the Cheyenne, not as fine-featured as the Crow. Such gay vibes. Like, honestly, why are you talking about his height and like his features? There's a lot of gay vibes in this movie. I would just like to point that out. There's this scene prior to this where Spirit, they're trying to ride him. So they put him in the corral and all of the guys take turns trying to ride him.
Because of the vultures in this room.
And then he bucks them all off. And every time he does it, he stops and he makes direct eye contact with the colonel. And it's like, okay, like what's going on here? So here we start to see sort of the tone in which the white people are treating the Indigenous people in this film. The vibe is very much that the Indigenous people are treated the same way as the animals, which is why I go back to the earlier line in which the colonel says, the army has dealt with wild horses before, this one will be no different. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but to me, it really feels like he's referencing Native American people. They literally treat Little Creek like he's a freaking raccoon that they found digging in their trash. The colonel says that Little Creek should be tied up in the corral alongside Spirit with no food and no water for 3 days. There you go. He pretty much said put him in the stables. The one thing I like about this movie is I feel like it accurately portrays really how white people saw Indigenous people at this time and for a long time, and honestly, even still sometimes. It's very much these people are the same as horses. We break them, we make them exactly like us, we make them wear our clothes, we take away their culture, we take away their land, and if they don't get with it, then it's one of those things that you don't really notice, obviously, unless you're an adult. Like, it's a fun movie, it's sad, poor Spirit, but there's a very real implication. You can say I'm reaching on the other part, but he literally says, put him in the corral. No food, no water for 3 days, right by the horse. He needs to be broken. So after 3 days have passed, the colonel decides that it's his turn to try to ride Spirit. He does. And Spirit is giving it his all. He's rolling around. He's slamming this man into the wall. Realistically, obviously, he would not be alive, but I digress. So Spirit can't get him off his back. And we're like, oh shit, like, what's going on?
I was shocked, honey. I was in tears almost.
He sort of gives up. And you're like, oh my God, is this it? The colonel is very proud of himself. And he makes Spirit like walk around the corral and says, you see, gentlemen, any horse can be broken. There are those in Washington who believe the West will never be settled. The Northern Pacific Railroad will never breach Nebraska. A hostile Lakota will never submit to Providence. And it is that manner of small thinking that would say this horse could never be broken. Discipline, time, and patience are the 3 great levelers. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, I don't even feel like I'm reaching at this point. Like, he's just proving what I'm saying. Spirit at this point is like, hold on. What am I doing? Like, why am I giving in to this man? And he says, sometimes a horse has got to do what a horse has got to do. And then he basically goes wild and he bucks this man off. He breaks the fence. Like, it's pretty embarrassing for the colonel because he's like mid-speech about like, you see, gentlemen, anybody can break a horse. and I'm a really big fancy man, da 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 da. And Spirit is like, and then like, kind of embarrassing for him, honestly. All the horses in the corral start laughing. Like, it's so funny because in this movie, a lot of the time the animals react to what the humans do, and because the horses don't speak, we get like their reactions of like them laughing, them neighing, and I think that's really funny. And I really think it's interesting how they managed to make the movie not boring, even though there's really not a lot of dialogue in it. But whether you're young or old, you really are interested in the movie and what's going on. The Colonel is mad, and he's like, F this.
You're disrespecting a future U.S. Army soldier.
And he gets out his boom boom and is like, I'm gonna kill Spirit. Again, can we talk about how when you can't get something to go your way, the immediate reaction is to rid it from your life and existence? What kind of reaction is that? Sir, you need therapy. Go talk about that in therapy. Thank you. At this point, Little Creek has managed to snag himself a little knife. So while all of this is happening, he's kind of like working at his ropes. And right before the inevitable is about to happen, he slices through his ropes and jumps on Spirit. And basically him and Spirit run around and like steal a rifle, and then he like jumps through the corral and lets all the other horses free, and then the horses stampede out of there and out into freedom. And basically he frees all the horses, and it's amazing, it's incredible. There's inspirational music going, like they're all free, Spirit is running, and all the soldiers have lost not only one Mustang but all of their horses, which is a win for us. As he's running out, Spirit is like, I'm free, everything's great, life is amazing. And then the Native American dudes capture him. Eek. Now, obviously, the tone here is much different. They just like casually throw some ropes around him and they're like, come on, bro. And he's like, ugh, God, I'm captured again. And like in Spirit's mind, he's like, I'm trying to go home. But in their mind, they're probably like, hey, there's this horse, like, we're not just gonna run off. Like, we're gonna take him with us. Which I like kind of get. And I'd also want to say that like obviously the tone is extremely different in the way Spirit is treated. He's treated with respect at the Lakota camp. It's a very different vibe, very different tone. So here is where we get a glimpse of our girl, our queen, Miss Rain. Now, Rain is an icon. She is a legend. She's the moment.
She's an icon. She's a legend, and she is the moment. Now, come on now.
And we get a little romance between Rain and Spirit. So Spirit sees Rain, and then he gets captured again, and he's like, oh no, I'm captured. But low-key, he's like, I'll go where that cute girl's going. You know what I mean? And honestly, I can't blame him. The next morning, Spirit is in his new environment. He's in the camp with the other Lakota people. He has like a pile of apples. He's grazing. Definitely much more of a chill vibe. And he looks over at Rain, and he's like kind of trying to holler at her. And she's like, who are you? It's kind of cute. And Rain has this really cute relationship with Little Creek. Like, obviously they have a bond. They like play together in the field. It's really cute. And Spirit is confused by this. Spirit's only experience with humans at this point has been negative. And he's like, why are you trying to be friends with them? Like, they're mean to us. So he's confused. And he wants to escape. But Little Creek wants to keep him. Little Creek tries to ride Spirit, and Spirit's like, not gonna happen. And Little Creek's like, okay, whatever. So he ties Rain and Spirit together and then is like, all right, go run free, because he knows that Rain is not going to leave and that Spirit can't leave because he's attached to her. Rain shows him her life. We see like all the Native American people, and they're like having a good time, and they have this like lovely little camp going on, and clearly like the other animals are running free. Most of them are just like chilling. Like, you can see the relationship is very different with the other people and how they treat their horses. It's a completely different tone. So Rain kind of shows him her world, and he's like, okay, maybe it's not so bad here. There's also a really cute moment where Spirit and Little Creek bond. They like become homies, really. It's really sweet. And then Little Creek says, I'm never gonna ride you, am I? And no one ever should. It's so cute. Like, it's just like this moment where he's like, honestly, this creature is not meant for this. He is his own person. He doesn't deserve to be ridden or broken by anyone. And that is a big moment. I feel like it's very interesting. Do a lot of childhood movies talk about this? Children are raised to, oh, here's a puppy for Christmas, and it's like a toy. It's just like another object. But animals and pets do not exist for our entertainment or our use. They're beings completely of their own self and their own spirit, and they deserve to live their own lives, and they deserve to have respect from us. You know what I mean? So at this moment, Little Creek is like, you know what? I don't deserve to keep this horse. Like, he deserves to run free. He belongs to no one. So he sets Spirit free, and Spirit is like, oh my God, I'm so excited. So he goes to Rain, and he's like, Rain, like, let's go. Like, she's scared. She's like, I can't leave. And like, Spirit is actually really sweet because he can tell that she's just scared about leaving Little Creek, but like, she does care about him and she does want to go with him. And he's kind of like trying to talk her into it a little bit. And then right as this is happening, disaster strikes. The soldiers have found the Lakota camp, and they basically come in and do what they do. And so Spirit sees this happening, and he has a choice. Does he run and achieve his own freedom, or does he go back and protect these people that have now become like another home and another family to him? He decides to go back and help them. And then guess who's leading the charge? The Colonel. So this man is pissed. He's just like mad that he got defied by these two people, and he's like, you know, embarrassed, obviously. There's a standoff between Little Creek and the Colonel, and Little Creek is on top of Rain, and they fall into like a rushing river, and there's like rapids. So Rain gets washed away, and Little Creek attaches himself onto a rock, and then the Colonel takes out his gun and is like about to pew, and Spirit sees this, and he runs up to the Colonel and like knocks him off of his horse, and the shot goes sideways, and he saves Little Creek's life. Like, he literally saves his life, and Little Creek sees this happening, and he's like, oh my God, you saved my life. So then Spirit immediately is like, I gotta go save my girl. So he goes, and Rain is like stuck in the water. So he's running up the river, he's running, and he jumps into the water to try to save her, and they both fall down a freaking waterfall. Guys, when I watched this as a child, this moment changed the course of my life.
I've never seen this before. I am shook the house. Houston, I'm deceased.
I was gagged, okay? I could not believe these horses fell down a freaking waterfall. So the next scene cuts to Rain, and she's on the shore, and she's not doing well. She's not looking good. And this part is actually the most emotional part. It's rough. So Spirit comes up to her, and he doesn't want to leave her. He won't leave her behind. And he comes up behind her, and they're like spooning. He like lays next to her. Oh my God. It's a lot. And then guess who shows up? The stupid ass soldiers again. They capture him, and they're pulling him away from her, and they say, leave the mare. She's not gonna make it. Bitch, what? So they're pulling him away. He's screaming. He's like, I don't want to leave my girl. And she's like, no, don't leave me. I don't feel good. It's so sad.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
As he's being pulled away, we see that Little Creek is hiding behind a boulder, and he's like watching all of this happen. So as he's being led away, he goes up to Rain and is like checking up on her. Oh yeah? So here we get probably the most emotional part of the film. As Spirit is being led away, snow begins to fall, okay? Sound the Bugle starts playing. Pause. If you do not listen to any other song on this soundtrack, go and listen to Sound the Bugle. It is incredible. It is a masterpiece. It is so good, okay? Spirit is being led onto a train and Sound the Bugle is playing. And at this point, Spirit is just defeated. He has been captured like 4 times. He's found another family, lost them. His girl is gone. He doesn't know if she's even going to make it, if she's even alive. And he's on another train to go who knows where. And he misses his family. This is Sound the Bugle. Sound the bugle now. Play it just for me. There's not a road I know that leads to anywhere. Okay? You get it? So, he's on a train. It's snowing. He's cold. He's sad. He looks out the window and he thinks that he sees his mom and his herd galloping next to the train. But it's actually just an illusion and a trick of the light, and he gets disappointed again. Like, are you joking? Are you kidding me? Okay, so the train arrives at a railroad camp. Now, he is a workhorse. They're working on the railroad. At this point in time, this is actually very common for horses to be worked in this way. They basically were worked until they dropped, and then they were dragged away and another horse replaced them. Like, that was just the way that it worked. Horses were a commodity. They were something to be used and thrown away, essentially. And honestly, we still treat horses like this now. And I think the treatment of animals, specifically horses, is something to be talked about. But that's, again, another film. So they're at the railroad camp, and all of the horses are pulling this giant steam engine up a mountain. And there's probably like 40 or 50 horses, and they're all connected together. And they're basically just heaving this extremely heavy steam engine over a mountain. He realizes that they're heading in the exact direction of his home, and he doesn't want that to happen. So Spirit comes up with an idea. He decides to pretend to faint. So he drops. Obviously, the whole point of these workhorses is basically to work them until they drop. So they come to take Spirit away and replace him with a different horse. So whenever they come to take him away, they take off his bridle and his chains, and they start dragging him away by his hooves. As this is happening, he's pretending to be asleep, and then all of a sudden, he slips out of the chain and starts running in the opposite direction. He runs directly to where all the horses are attached to the steam engine, and he starts kicking at the chains. He kicks them until they break, and then all of the horses become free. And when they become free, the steam engine starts to fall down the hill. So all of the horses run away. Now, this is the second time that Spirit has let all of the horses escape and also destroyed like a ton of property. And I just think that's such a badass move. And can you imagine getting outsmarted by a horse not once, but 2 times, and him causing all this damage?
Embarrassing.
So the steam engine is rolling down the hill, and this thing is big. Like, it's pretty dangerous. It almost hits Spirit. It's like this whole thing, and it rolls down the hill and it crashes into the camp and everything explodes. It's basically this huge forest fire. So as Spirit is running away from this ruckus that he has caused, he looks back at the army camp, the flames reflecting in his eyes. Like, are you telling me this man is not an Aries? That is the most Aries behavior I've ever seen. So he runs off. At this point, he's kind of accidentally created an entire forest fire. He's basically trying to escape the fire that has now gotten out of hand. And he still has one chain like wrapped around his neck. And he jumps over a log, and the chain gets caught on the log, and he like stops. He's pulled back. He's looking behind him. The fire is catching up. It's not looking good. Who comes, smashes the trunk with a rock, and frees Spirit? Little Creek. He has come to return the favor. Spirit saved his life. So Little Creek came back to save Spirit. Incredible. Amazing. It's so good. It's so good. So then they both escape. They run, they jump off yet another cliff and into the water. But this time it's like all good. They're fine. Next morning, Spirit wakes up. He's in a green pasture. He sees a pile of apples next to him. He looks up. Little Creek is there. Life is good. They're playing together. They have this amazing bond. It's really like the happy moment that we needed after such an emotional journey that we've been through thus far. Whenever they're interacting with each other, Little Creek says to Spirit, "I knew I would find you." And there's something really sweet about the respect that Little Creek gives to Spirit and the juxtaposition of it all. The difference between how he treats Spirit versus how the army treated Spirit. How Little Creek saw him as a creature that deserved respect, that deserved its own life and its own freedom, whereas the army not only saw the Native Americans, but the horses as well, as nothing more than commodities, things to be used and thrown away. And then who shows up yet again to ruin the party? I'll give you one guess. The United States government. The army shows up again, and they see Spirit, and they see Little Creek, and also the colonel is there. The colonel. And he's honestly just as surprised to see them as they are to see him. He's like, why are these guys back here? Why can I not escape them? Why do they come back to haunt me and remind me of my own failures? Another chase ensues, and this time Spirit allows Little Creek to get on his back. And it's honestly a really sweet moment between the two of them where they both see each other as equals and treat each other as equals. And it's when they establish that respect that Spirit allows Little Creek to ride his back, which I think is really sweet. So another chase ensues. And this time, the horses of the soldiers are not having it. They're tired of this. And they're like bucking the soldiers off and like causing problems, which I think is absolutely hilarious. I really like the idea in this movie of like the animals fighting back. There's the same theme whenever they're in the army camp when Spirit is unable to be broken and the other horses are laughing at the soldiers as they get bucked off. Like, I really love this idea of the animals fighting back. So, we're coming to the final scene. This is where everything comes to a head. Little Creek and Spirit get to the very top of this huge canyon rock, and there's no water on any of the sides, and they're basically cornered at the top. Spirit decides to do something extremely risky and jump a very great distance from the rock to basically freedom. And he jumps through the air, and you're like, oh my god, is he gonna fall? Spoiler alert, he doesn't fall. And him and Little Creek land on the other side, and they're like, holy crap, I can't believe we just did that. I can't believe we're alive. And so the other soldier tries to shoot at them, but the colonel puts his hand down. And it seems to me in this moment that the colonel knows he's been beat. And honestly, why did it take you this long to get there? Imagine being outsmarted by a horse so many times, and it takes you to this point to finally be like, all right, I'll let him go. Like, is that not embarrassing for you? If anything, it just shows that men have absolutely no shame. But we already knew that. Anyway, the colonel nods at Spirit, Spirit nods back, and the soldiers go on their way. And Spirit and Little Creek go on their way. And it's a beautiful moment where Spirit finally has his freedom. But the movie's not done yet. Spirit and Little Creek ride into the Lakota camp. And guess who's still alive? Rain. Yes, our queen, our girl. She's still alive. She's thriving. She's not dead. Bet you thought she was, but she's not. Rain decides it's time to go back with Spirit. And there's this really emotional goodbye between Rain and Little Creek, and another emotional goodbye between Little Creek and Spirit. Up until this point, we actually don't know Spirit's name. I just told you at the beginning because I felt like it was necessary, and also because you do know his name because the movie is called Spirit, but you don't know how he gets that name. So as Little Creek is telling him goodbye, he says, "Take care of her, Spirit who could not be broken."
I'm literally crying over my nails right now.
And Spirit and Rain run off into the sunset. Spirit narrates, "I had been waiting so long to run free, but that goodbye was harder than I'd ever imagined. I'll never forget that boy and how we won back our freedom together." So Spirit and Rain travel back, and there's a joyous reunion, and everybody runs free together, and that's the end of the movie. Okay, so let's talk about my closing thoughts. I think that Spirit is an incredible film. It's visually stunning and emotional. I like this story because it's easily watched as a heartfelt, family-friendly story of a horse finding his way home. But there's so much more to be discovered when you look deeper, and there's so much more meaning to the film if you want to look deeper. It tells an important story that we seem to forget more and more as time goes on. Westward expansion was not a good thing for everybody. The way the spirit is treated in this movie and forced to be broken is very similar to how the United States forced indigenous people to conform to our ways of life, stripping them of their identity and culture. And that is obviously a bigger issue than the fact that there are no longer wild herds running around anymore. But it does suck. It does suck that these animals didn't get to live the free life that they deserve, and that in general, animals don't get to live the lives that they deserve. If we look at history, we know that Rain and Spirit didn't actually get the happy ending that we see in this movie. But I kind of don't want to get too much into that, because the point is to watch the movie, to feel good about it, and to be like, oh, that was a cute, happy ending, you know? So we don't really have to think about the realities of that too much. Unfortunately, we do see the realities of that every single day. All right, that is going to be the end of this video. If you watched to the end, thank you so much. I started off deciding to make this video because I realized that I had a lot of thoughts about an animated horse movie for children. And I just thought, wouldn't that be a good video analysis? And I didn't think it was going to turn into a 4,000 word script, but it did. So I hope that you enjoyed it. And I would love to hear your opinions. I would love to start a discussion about this. So if anyone has any thoughts, please let me know. And also, if you could interact with this video, that would be amazing, because I want to buy a Rode microphone. So if you want better sound quality, give this video a thumbs up. Okay, bye. Should I do like the old YouTuber goodbye? The like, bye guys.